the new age doesn't necessarily solve the future.
No, it doesn't. It absolutely. Well, I'll give you an example of that. 20 years ago, when all of our competitors, our traditional competitors, were moving to satellite dispatch,
Okay.
we were still working on two-way radios. And when they moved to satellite dispatch, essentially what was happening is that the system would send a trip to the closest car, but
Okay.
that driver could reject it. And then that trip rejected would go back to their dispatch and then go to the next closest car, which was farther away, and
Oh,
so on.
okay. Yeah.
We gained hundreds of taxis and drivers and customers as a result of that amazing new technology that
Yeah.
was being introduced. And, I do think that technology really needs to be treated as a bit of a buffet. It's not because it's there, it's good. And we've seen that
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
But Uber was not the first experience for us in making those decisions and understanding what's best for the people that we work with and for us to be able to do our jobs well. And I think, I guess that's the way you asked me how I
Approach things.
approach things.
Yeah.
I try to approach things with a stand back attitude, and, nothing's a big deal unless you make it into one.
Yeah.
And you can only control as much as you can control. And if you freak out, that's the worst thing you can do. So
Yeah.
I think, when your message gets lost in the delivery, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And all of those things get put into kind of a bucket for me.
Yeah.
And it's applied to everything that I do. And that's with my kids. That's with everything. It's like, okay.
And when you do that, when you have that approach in general, is that kind of like is there anything that you've really changed in your habit that kind of shaped you in that way? Is there anything that you've experienced that kind of shaped you in that way? And you've just decided that, okay, you know what, this approach in the past wasn't working for me. This is a new approach. This is a new Kristine.
Yeah, working in a family business and working in the taxi business.
Yes. It's very fierce. I'll be honest with you, it's a very fierce industry to be in general, whether it was a traditional and regulated or whether it's today. It's fierce either or. It was just like less fierce than today a little bit. Well, because people are more aware and consumers are more aware about prices and things like that.
Right.
Before, it used to be kind of like you agreed with your competitors, or there was like a regulated price out there for the meter.
Mhm.
Today, it's just different. That you got Uber, you got Lyft, and you know what? We get like tantrumed with ads from the big guys all the time. 40% off, 30% off. This. But and I think it's not really real. And now they do the 30% and 20% off, but I don't think we're not going out with social distancing, with public health orders that we've taken. Obviously, it's not going to be easy. The new norm is going to be different. But I think you've really got a great approach, and one of the things. What is a good book that you would advise people to read that kind of shaped you in that way to have that approach, or an experience even that you've had?
Yeah, I think it's a whole bunch of experiences combined that end up, you take lessons from all the things that you see, and you look back on ways you reacted to things or the way you responded to something, and you see how it either worked or it didn't, and then you change it. I think that I don't have a book. I will say to you that during especially that time, it was 24 hours a day. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Like I never saw my kids. I felt like I wasn't doing a good job here or out there or anywhere. And it was just absolutely too hectic. And I think, the biggest thing for me was to try to always take a step back. And I don't think there's a book that I read about that but there's something about self-preservation
Okay.
that requires you to do it, because you can, there were moments where I thought, well, that's it. I'm done. I think I can't do it. Yeah, it was, the late nights, and one day on the way to City Hall, and I took someone's side mirror off their car, and I'm out in the street trying to find a neighbor who's owned the car. These are the moments where it's just like, I could see those things happening in a movie.
Yeah.
And in the movie, the girl would just give up.
yeah. And you know, the real world is hard. The
Oh,
realities is so hard. So many
so,
times you want to give up. So many times you're like, oh, why
yeah,
am I doing this? And
yeah.
I'm sure you had other options too, but you kept doing what you're doing. That's one thing I'm very interested in knowing. Like, did you have options that you could have chosen a different career,
Sure.
or you just went for the family business? Because I know, you know, your dad. You got to show that picture someday. That your dad's picture that you
Oh
showed
my
on
God.
Twitter.
Yeah.
He looked like a Hollywood reporter.
Well, my both of my parents had that sort of Hollywood look about them, actually. So it's pretty funny. My mom, so she took over Beck Taxi in the '80s
Okay.
uh, as sort of president,
Yeah.
um, and because of there was that TV show Taxi, and there was some people believed they understood what the taxi business was like, and that it was hard and smoky and
Yeah.
dirty, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
So
the movies.
yeah, so there was a show where this woman taxi manager, they sort of fashioned her after my mom,
Oh,
because
okay.
yeah, that's and then there was an article and it showed my mom sort of standing like this, and the actress who was playing the taxi boss was
Wow.
and it's kind of fun, but the reality is a lot none of that is true. I
No.
mean, there was a time where people would come to our office, say, okay, well, we can have a meeting, you want to open an account or whatever. They come to our office expecting that they were going to see a trailer in the parking lot of some other office building, but they come in and we actually have office space, and
Yeah.
there are people here and nobody's smoking inside. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. So it's not
you
like the TV show at all. It's
not
like, you
like
know what I
a TV
mean?
show at all.
Yeah.
And we don't have a gas station, and we don't none of that stuff. Obviously, I'm sure there are periods in time, and maybe more in the States and in Canada, that had those sort of
Yeah.
similar scenarios. But um, I did have other options. It just when you start, okay, well, I went to York University and graduated from Western.
Okay.
I stayed home at York for the first 2 years of my undergrad. And if I couldn't find a parking space fast enough, I would lie to my
Yeah.
boss, and
Yeah.
say, class was canceled. Here I am. And I'd come to work.
Okay.
And then I decided I needed to kind of get away a little bit. So I went to Western. And thankfully, all my credits transferred over there. So that was an
Yeah.
exciting. But
That's
um,
the easiest part. That's the easiest part of
it's like, but what I did was planned my classes so that I had Monday through Friday morning. Friday afternoon, I would leave London. I would come back here and work Friday night and Saturday.
Okay.
And then I'd go out with my friends in Toronto on Saturday night and go back to London on Sunday.
And but let me, so the traffic was not as bad, I'm assuming, when
Traffic is
you
not as bad. Yeah,
was
yeah.
not as bad as today, because that today would be
That's when I
impossible.
graduated. Yeah. I wasn't in school at the same time as you.
Yeah. No, but I think even if I was in school here, I would have, because I went to school out east and Cape Breton Island, and I went to Dalhousie as well. So I did like a couple of degrees here and there, and actually not a couple of degrees, like 1 degree there, 1 degree there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Nice.
but I think like what I find is, when I look at like old pictures of Toronto and some of the things you share, and some of the things like Block TO or Old Toronto share, I feel like here, like the back in the day, life was fun. Life
Yeah.
was nice. It was very nice. People were nice. There was not a lot of traffic. It seemed like a mellow place to be, like a good energy, good vibe kind of thing in
Well,
Canada.
that picture of my dad, I think, kind of puts it into
Yeah, it does.
I do remember. So he was driving a taxi then. I was a kid. My parents have worked so hard. It was unbelievable. The things my mom, that's a whole book in itself.
Yeah,
And watching her, what she was up against, she really did, do so much of the work in terms of being able to establish that, hey, a woman can be in charge here and we can do well. And she's done it all.
and she
But
did it before the times allowed it to do it too. So that's just
yeah, oh yeah,
that's a setting stone right there.
oh
That's
yeah.
a setting stone.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yep.
And when you have those experiences and you see someone so close to you going through all the things she went through and all the fighting and all the city, like all those city hall gatherings, that those weren't the first times. Uber did
Yeah.
not like the first taxi drivers at city hall business.
Okay.
So he had already done all of that. But that's, I didn't necessarily sign up for the spokesperson role.
Yeah.
But when this all started to happen, she said to me, like, I'm not doing it. You
Yeah.
have to,
Okay. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not doing it. You're going to have to be the one who talks about this. I'm done. I can't do it again. And so that was a really interesting transition in this company. And I think, watching her grow as I grew up watching her, and I thought, oh, I'm going to go to law school. I wrote my LSATs. I applied to law
Wow.
school. That was it. And I thought, oh, I have this great, client built in,
Yeah.
obviously. So that was, I was young and I thought, yeah, I knew it all. But then, when I was faced with the option of, hey, do I really want to stay in school for that long when I loved coming here? I loved my job. I loved already all of the people and the drivers and the excitement. And I started to think, and my mom had told me that once, if you sit in an office, if you open a flower shop, or if you do whatever it is you're thinking you're going to do, the walls are going to close in on you. Because when you're in a community like this, when you participate in something that involves so many people from so many places and have had so many experiences,
Yeah.
it actually, the idea of you know, reducing that seems impossible. So that was
Yeah.
it for me.
And I think you have a lot of good energy, like in you as a person, because you tend to. I think what you didn't want is you didn't want to be lonely in an office reading papers back then.
Yeah.
And then
No.
as you kind of realized as you were studying that you didn't want that, oh, I'm going to be on a laptop or reading papers. I'm going to,
Mhm.
sit alone. You have a vibrant, I guess vibrant charisma, I would say. And I think that works for you because, given that it's also a family business, it's a different story. But I think that you came in the kind of the right time because you advocated the speaking. I honestly didn't know like all the ins and outs just till we spoke today. All the,
Mhm.
the the stories that happened in the past, how you anticipate all that. That's a long time ago, and I would say chapeau. And I don't know if you know chapeau. It's like it means bravo in French.
Oh no, I
Yeah,
did not.
so chapeau to you, to your family for being there for the city, for your drivers, everybody that's involved with you guys, because I think you've served for a long time, and I don't think you got enough credit, nor did when competition came from the US and, with platforms and everything changing and all that, that nobody still like heard your story. And that's why today we spoke. And I want people to hear this because they have to know the truth because not everything is just hunky dory and success and this. And they had that because some people will tell you, oh, well, cabs had their fair share of the market. They did
Yeah.
for many
Yeah.
years, but they
Yeah.
still have to have their fair share because they've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
there. It's not the
Exactly.
platform that's going to change the planet. It's the people that will change the planet, right?
That's right. 100%. Yeah.
And one of the things that, like, okay, so you didn't, you said there was no written rule or written book that you read that changed you, but I think
So,
from my perspective, I think your desire to be there was very important.
right. Yeah, there was no lack of interest. Like I loved it, and I'd had a great experience working here, and not without its struggles. Again, it's a family business that's 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah,
I can't describe to you, so those are the things that I take into consideration now with my own daughters who are now teenagers.
yeah,
And, it's what do we do about this?
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, when I was 15, I sat at the dinner table with my parents and I said, "Hey guys, I could work at Beck Taxi. I can answer the phone. Pretend you're the customer. I'll be the call taker." And we did this sort of role play and I was like, "See, I can do it." And then they hired me
Okay.
and I got my cereal every Saturday morning. Like what a big loser I was as a young teenager trying to get a job, when I didn't necessarily have to. But then when I started really getting into it and understanding the different sort of layers of the business and watching my mom and, seeing how drivers responded to her and how people responded to Beck when it came to the service that was being provided and the stories and the experiences, is just like, now I wonder, I don't know what to do with my own kids.
No, I think you've pointed out like a very valid point, right? Like you were excited back when you were 15, a teenager, and you wanted to do, take the calls and do the dispatch and all that, and that's like the limelight of excitement.
Mhm.
Because I did the same thing for one of my uncles at a restaurant, and when I was 15, I was
Yeah,
like, let me just take calls for the delivery, for pickup, for whatever, I'll do it,
yeah,
right? And he's
yeah.
like, what option do you have? And I'm like, well, I speak two languages, so if the UN ever order from you, I will take that call.
I can do that.
Right? So that was my competitive advantage. And I like, like I say, with your kids, with running the family business 24 hours, um, do you kind of like, you're having dinner, do you kind of like, if you get a phone call from work, do you pick it up, or do you wait, kind of thing, or it kind of depends on the situation?
I will say the biggest challenge was, yeah, when they were younger, and my husband actually is a firefighter, so he works
Okay.
24-hour shifts.
Yeah.
So he works 24-hour shifts, and then we have this sort of 24-hour business, and our kids, there's not a whole lot of extra time. So when I am with them,
Yep.
I try to really be focused. There's no phone that rings. I don't even actually have a landline, and my phone's on silent.
Okay.
So yeah, no phone rings during dinner, and we sit down as often as possible. And now, frankly, with the pandemic, they're both competitive soccer players, so that's actually the thing that keeps us from being able to sit down as a family to eat. But now, now things are a little bit less hectic. But in 2014 and 2015, I wasn't even home. Like, I wasn't even going
I
home.
can only imagine. I can only imagine when you see like when you see a shark, because I think that was like kind of the boom of technology. I think
Yeah.
when we started getting like better phones,
Mhm.
better services, high speed internet on a phone, right? Because like if you think about it, 2011, 2012, had society been that aware
Mhm.
of what the potential of these
Yeah, the
devices were?
implications were not being presented at the time.
No, no, and I remember like I went to maybe multiple startup conventions. So I work in technology. So
Mhm.
my day to day jobs is information technology, and I
Mhm.
remember like so I was doing my master's at the time at Dalhousie, and I remember just when 2010 or 11 I went to a startup convention, and I invented a mortgage calculator with a bunch of students that were with me, and
Mhm.
basically we used GPS. We used so it was just an idea. It was
Mhm.
basically that you would put in your income, your credit, like what you're in debt for, like if you had a student loan. You never needed to put personal information like your name or
Mhm.
social insurance, and it will kind of like list out all the homes around you that are for sale that you can afford at that time. That was a
Right.
good idea at the time, but nobody saw the potential of it. And then one company just came up with it. It's called, I think it's viewit.ca now. But they loved the idea. They took it. We were
Yeah,
just a
me
bunch of students. I don't know how it went or how the product went, but I remember just like being excited, working 24/7.
mhm.
Technology is going to be
Yeah.
great. The future's going to look great. We did not know the impact of
No.
how much it would impact so many people within our communities. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that's one thing that I feel like bad about, like, oh, because Uber Lyft came out, we were like, oh, this is great, I don't have to
Mhm.
wave, I don't have to call somebody to get a cab. This is great, just an app and minimal communication. But we do not think of that impact that happened to
Yeah,
you
there's a
guys, you know
real
what I mean?
ripple effect. Yeah, it's and it's people. We're talking about people. And I remember there was the day, the big strike, the big taxi
Yeah.
protest. And I was so afraid going into that day, knowing that was going to happen, understanding what the message was, but knowing it wasn't going to be received well.
Yeah.
You start to get worried about people behaving in a way that they never would.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the people that I was working with, a lot of the drivers who still, fleets, whatever, they're like anyone's dad, and they have kids of their own, and they're
Yeah.
mild mannered people who do, who go to work every day and take care of the kids after work and go to bed and do it all again the next day, like we all do.
Yeah.
But in those days when all of that was going on, I would see video clips, or I was down there sort of lurking around to see how things were going, to figure out if everything was okay. And I saw people losing their minds in a way that, like, screaming and spitting and hysterical. And
Yep.
what people saw was, oh, look at these angry cab drivers. All they were was, they were terrified
They were
and just.
terrified, and you see the same exact behavior as all of us today are facing the pandemic. You know what I mean? It's not like,
Yeah.
or the cab drivers or the industry kind of like saw its bad behavior in that year and kind of like,
Mhm.
oh well, they're bad. No, today we see it. We see people
Mhm.
arguing in supermarkets over,
Yeah.
someone not complying,
Yeah.
as that simple, or someone doing something, and you see it. We've got tons of like social media posts of what's going on in Toronto and how people are becoming panicky, and
Mhm.
this, as simple as it is, somebody coughed in someone's face, and that just shows you the horrific behavior of people. And you know what? I think the protests that happened at the time that nobody knew what was going to happen.
Mhm.
And I think that's just normal behavior, just like we are
Yeah.
behaving today.
Yeah.
People
Well,
don't
and
know
I
what's
think
going to
that's
happen,
what
and we
happened.
panic.
To your point about politicians not listening and whatever, when you have a voice and no one's listening, you start to raise your voice and still no one listens. And
Yeah,
you start to raise your voice more and still no one listens, to the point where you're just, your head pops off. And I think, that's what so many were going through. That was definitely the hardest part about it, though, was just watching how people were, and I just tried so hard not to let it happen to me. Like, I mean, of course I had my screaming fits, and I cried a few times.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Times, there's just so much heartbreak in all of it. And all I kept thinking was this big, horrible company that treats people like crap. And it's not like a rumor, it's well established that they're
Yeah. No, no,
evil.
it's well established, and I hear people all the time. When you're in a Uber or in a cab. Actually, I took a cab. I think in Christmas last year during the Christmas party. I think I took one of your cabs, and I ended up. I asked the driver one thing. He said that he went to Uber and he went back to cab driving,
Yeah.
and he said the reason why, because he felt like he was not making anything with Uber. And I'm not trying to bad or trash anybody, but
No,
honestly,
no,
like, it was
no.
just an honest opinion, honest conversation, right? And he
But
said, like, where I'm taking you right now, I'm making X amount of dollars. That gives me enough for my gas, enough for my car maintenance, enough for
right.
all of that, right? And then all of that was like, yeah, you know what? It makes sense to want to earn a living. It makes sense to want to earn a normal, living. I'm not saying, under or over, but I think, and I asked him why did he's not really happy with the technology, and he's like, oh, he tried it, it didn't really work for him. He's got a kid going to university and he's got a kid doing this, so he needs that extra. And he's like, I'd rather do that and get rightly paid and take 2-3 rides a day than 12
Mhm.
rides, and I can make the same as what I make as 2-3 rides. And it's a
Right.
very honest conversation. You know what I mean? Um, the other thing I wanted to ask you is, when the pinnacle of all the situations happened, and what was it, 2014, when the protests, or what year did those
That
protests?
was, yeah, 20, oh geez, 2014 or 2015,
15, maybe around that time. Because
around there.
I learned about Uber maybe end of 2014, early 2015, but I was in Calgary at the time.
And I think the city voted on the rules for Uber in 2015. They came into effect 2016, so that the protest could have been late 2014 or early 2015 in advance of that voting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said you had seen, the worst of the worst, and you kind of didn't want it to get to your head, and you kept going. Did you see light at the end of the tunnel at that time?
I think, I don't know if I would call it light at the end of the tunnel. I think even if there's not a light, I was just so angry
Yeah.
that it didn't matter. I just was so disgusted.
Yes.
Actually.
Of course. I
And
mean, your closest ties and allies one day just turn the table at you and see, like, oh well, sorry,
well,
you're right. That's
they weren't our allies. Let's be clear of that. The city of
okay.
Toronto, we have succeeded in spite of our
Okay.
city hall all along. So I have no illusions about them having supported us before.
Yeah.
They just made it glaringly apparent that they didn't support us when we just made it too easy for them. We
Yeah.
were following rules. That's the part that you kind of go, oh, so all this time
So me
we
being
should,
following the rules,
yeah,
walking by the wall, kind of
yeah,
makes the wall fall on me, kind of thing. Is
yeah,
that's
exactly.
wow?
And the sense of betrayal and then embarrassment and anger and all these feelings you have about having spent your whole life walking the wall,
Yeah.
and parents have walked the wall, and tens of thousands of cab drivers and taxi operators are walking the wall, and then all it takes is a young guy in a suit, with good hair to
And hair gel
have,
brushed back.
I don't even
Uber
know.
doesn't make any money.
Yeah, like, exactly, right? And so you're kind of left going. So you feel like you're the underdog, but then at the same time, you also have this bit of sense of superiority in that you are morally corrupt. These people who are lobbying for this company are morally corrupt.
Of
And to
course.
me, no money is more important than reputation and respect and the way you treat people. And so I did, like, there were moments, like, I exchanged words with different people through that period a few times, and I did become a little bit of you know I was I was not always super friendly with the people who were on
Yeah,
the
that's fine. Your competitors are always. I mean, it's kind of like also like a growth stage for you. It was kind of like, okay, this is the reality now. This is a new reality,
Mhm.
and you kind of, you didn't start a tantrum. You didn't throw things. You
no, no.
didn't. But you kind of like, yes, it was. That would be a hectic headache. You know what? From my personal, I would have sleepless nights if I was in your shoes. I
Like,
would not sleep. My
it
heart
wasn't.
would pound.
I started to tell you too. We were developing our whole software system. So
Yeah,
at the same time as this is going on, and we had come out with our app, whatever, we realized that it was successful and people were, they were taking it on and using it. So we realized how much we had to do if we wanted to. We were using a third party dispatch software and decided, okay, we can do this ourselves too. Because a lesson we've learned over the years is the more things you bring in house, no one cares about your business as much as you do. I
yeah,
can't call our third party dispatch software company and go at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, we need this change right now. They'd be
yeah,
like, well, we need to talk to our other customers and maybe, we'll put that on the list.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we embarked in the middle of this shitstorm,
yeah,
frankly.
yeah. That's fine.
That's what it was. Contacted Google, hired a consultant, and built our entire software system.
And
That
it all belongs to like you, and
it
it's
all
all managed
comes
by you, and and
inside.
that's amazing. What other competitors that you've had other than the big boys? Did anybody from your competitors in your industry see that wave coming? Did you guys have discussions as competitors, or was it kind of like, I'll do my own thing, you do your thing? Oh,
One day when we were kind of together in a place, we were the first ones to develop an app, and we're the only ones who've developed our own software and updates in our app, and new versions were coming out. And it was the general manager of another company, and I won't name it. He said to me, "Hey, Kristine, I'm just going to use your app, and everything you've done, I'm just going to put into ours."
but it doesn't work. It's
Yeah,
it's not that easy. It's
no,
never that easy. Trust
no,
me. It's like when you get, okay, so if I take out the hard drive from my laptop,
yeah,
right? If I take the hard drive from this laptop and I put it into your laptop, the computer's bust. It's never gonna go. What is in your computer works for your system. It's integrated with everything that's built in that machine. Same
well,
with
and every
here.
feature, he's like, the way it looks, all the features you have, we're just going to copy. And I was
Yeah.
just, you know,
And what?
yeah.
How was your reaction? Did they actually copy it, or no? There's just like
Very
talk.
But again, if you don't own the software,
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
make decisions about it. And so, I sort of tried, oh, that's nice. Flattery is whatever, a compliment. I don't know what the saying goes, but they, we did meet a couple of times, but everybody decides to go their own way. As an example, when the training was canceled and all the companies came together and we went to City Hall and said, we will not be participating in this no training for taxi drivers business. They
Yeah.
acted like they were doing us a favor. They said, "Oh, look, we're going to make it easier on you." Well, is that really who's that for? Who are you helping? Do taxi companies need help? Not really. What you needed to do, the responsibility was to taxi drivers. How does that help taxi drivers? It doesn't. To
Yeah.
remove providing them with the tools they need in order to make a living. That's stupid. Safety, insurance, all that stuff, implications when it comes to removing
Yeah.
training.
And
In
even
the end,
just like the human training of it, what to deal, how to deal with it. Also, being on the road is a lot different from somebody being randomly on the road. Like being on the road, I think, for example, so I drove every day from like Richmond Hill to Brampton every day for work.
mm,
That required like an experience. That whole year was like a complete different experience for me.
oh
Just having my eyes on the road, focused, and that's why I say like bravo to your guys. But going back to your point, it's not the same. It's not the
yeah,
same. No.
it's not the same. And I was really disappointed. I did sort of feel like we were on our own when everyone declared they were going to maintain training, and in the end, like with Centennial College, in the end, we were the only ones who did.
Yeah.
And I recognized again how much of a risk that was, because you could be a taxi driver with another company or independently, or you could be an app based company driver without requiring any training at all.
Yeah.
And we were the ones saying, you have to go to Centennial College, take this 1 week course. That includes an in car defensive driving component,
Yeah.
or you cannot drive a Beck branded vehicle.
Okay.
Because I weigh things against what I'm presenting to people I care about. Yeah, no, Beck taxis are safe. Yeah, get in there. No problem. You're fine. I'll get you home safe. Meanwhile, how can I say that if we're
It's
not
not
doing it to prove it,
the due
right?
diligence. You did your due diligence at the end of the day, like as a company, as a party, as
Mhm.
a company that operates in a regulated industry. I think
Mhm.
you've done a fantastic job, and I think you guys have done a fantastic job. It's unfortunate what happened. It was the reality that this
Yeah.
happened, but I
This-
wish people would have actually heard you guys out from the start, and I wish like it wasn't 2020 where you sat and had a conversation with someone openly. I wish it was
Mhm.
2015 where you did, and somebody that was in position of power to kind of like say, well, you know what, Kristine, Beck, all those companies that are operating today, they're part of our community. They're part of who we are. They represent the city. We should have, because either or, Uber, Lyft, they were going to lobby their way in, either
Yeah,
or, right?
they still are.
If
They're
we
still
had
there.
made it a little bit more difficult, or maybe they paid a higher premium, I
Mhm.
think that would have been a good solution. It would have kept you guys in the game and in the industry without having to hinder you, without having to scratch your cars, having to scratch the paint off the logos, and without
Mhm.
having all the protests and stuff. I mean, solutions are there. I could speak, all I want, but it's the person in those shoes that can only speak, which is you, the lobbyists, and
Yeah.
the city hall councilors as well. How is it like? Is it easy to deal with government here or not really? Like and like city government, municipal or provincial?
No, it's
It's
not easy. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. And, like any other, I learned very quickly. So, all at the same time, it was now I'm going to be government relations, and I'm going to register myself as a lobbyist, and I'm going to be doing sort of news interviews about it, and we're going to develop an app, and we're going to build a new software. And so it was a little bit like being pulled in a million directions.
yeah,
But the most frustrating part about it was dealing with government, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Like you know, they would hear the word taxi and they would just glaze over. My mom and I actually did go together to one counselor to discuss, like, these are the reasons why training is important and why there are problems, and look at San Francisco, and to talk to them about what the services our company was providing, and based on the rules, because we were able to follow every regulation and develop an app. So that's the
yeah.
thing that people have.
And you were an early bird in the development. Who would have thought in 2011? Who would have thought that a cab company would develop an app? That's one thing that's just like, for me, that's like a wow. Because when we were in 2011 developing apps, we were developing things like calculators,
Hmm,
games, modular stuff, but nothing to really like nothing data or GPS related. There was a few things out there that like GIS. Where you had like you were able to locate certain fleets
yeah.
for trucks and stuff, but that wasn't really, it wasn't really the time that like today. It wasn't like today at all. Today
and,
there's
and
like Fleet Tracker and stuff like that. It's
the
easy.
app we had then is not the same app that we have now. Obviously, I mean, it's been
Yeah.
updated and redesigned, and features, and it's a constant. And as a person, technology and software, what you build today has to be completely redone tomorrow in order to work on the latest operating systems and to meet the requirements that are introduced.
And how hard is it? So you're lobbying left, right, and center. So you're lobbying government, you're lobbying technology, and your platforms, and that's very challenging in its way to meet the App Store's requirements as an operator, in Canada in general.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to ask you, so from the lobbies, so you don't feel like the support from government, and it's not easy just dealing on a day to day with them, or
Right. So that story I started with my mom and I going into a counselor. This was the epitome for me of what it was like to deal with them. So we go in and we're talking about how important it is, and the different companies, and the fairness for taxi drivers, and income, and traffic, and congestion, and road safety, and all the things. And at the end, the only thing we got in response from this counselor was like, "You two," we introduced ourselves as mother and daughter when we got there. We're not trying to hide that.
yeah,
"You two could pass as mother and daughter."
wow.
Yeah.
Not even taking the conversation in a serious tone or manner, or directing you or helping you. So what would you like advise, like how do you deal with that? Honestly, like it's like kind of like the door got shut, slammed,
Yeah.
and you
Oh,
went back and you still want it to operate. Like, you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Well, I mean, I guess, I think it matters too that this business has been everything for us. The money that any, profit that is generated is invested back in this company.
Yeah.
So we're not people who have, I don't know, every once in a while we'll hear a rumor, a taxi driver will come in and go, "Hey, Christine, I heard your mom bought the no frills at the corner of Victoria Park and St. Clair." And you're like,
Just the rumors that come out of people.
the taxi industry is ripe for rumors. Like, it is just the most
Yeah.
rumor fueled industry, I'm sure of it. So, the thing for us, there just was never really anything else. I mean, of course, sure, I could have, been something else or got another job if I have to.
Yeah.
But I do recall that Beck Taxi, and when I started, I remember my mom saying, "Someday it would be amazing if we could have 500 cars, on
In
our."
your fleet. That was like your dream, right?
Yeah, that was
That
the
would have
dream. When
yeah.
I started, it was 200 cars. And then I remember, yeah, my mom would say, "What about 500?" But I was happy when there was 200. I was happy when there's 500. You know, it's what you get out of a business doesn't have to be, yeah, the more cars, the more, I don't know, for
Service
us,
you get to provide, yes.
yeah, the more service we provide, the more people are making money, the more people we can hire inside. But the reality is, I've never ever been in a place where I thought we weren't going to make it. That's not an option. You
Yeah.
know, the decisions that we made in the beginning, and it was like, people were coming at us from all angles too. "Christine, you should just forget it. Dump the taxi licenses, dispatch to private cars." And I thought, because of course that's an option.
Yeah, there's an option. That is an option that's out there, right?
It's an option that's out there. But what about all these people? What about all these people who've invested their entire lives, took out a mortgage on their house to buy a taxi plate, to buy this business that they could operate? I just can't do it. So there are things that, probably a lot of people would go, "Are you crazy? You could have made all kinds of money if you did this or that or the other." But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I'll, I can get into any Beck Taxi at any time, and the driver, either we know each other or we can have a great conversation even if we don't. But
Yeah.
the idea that I would be worried about or making decisions that would alienate or isolate or damage that relationship, that would be the thing that would send me packing for sure.
Oh, okay. But and the resilience that you've had throughout these years, and dealing with the controversy, dealing with situations that you guys have been in, and all the difficulties that come your way. Even though, like, there was a time in general that cabs were very dependent on from people. It was the primary. one
Yeah.
of the primary forms of transportations in big cities and things like that.
Mhm.
And you guys, do you feel like you've had your luck of share or fair share
We
in
still
many
do.
years, or oh, you still do? So that's good. So
Like right
there's
now, there's a pandemic.
yeah,
We're averaging about 10,000 trips through our apps and call center a day.
that's pretty good.
Where are people going? That's not including the taxis that are lined up outside the grocery stores or lined up outside the hospitals
Okay.
or getting flagged fares on the street. It's okay. We're okay. And knowing, people wouldn't continue to do this job if it wasn't okay. And it's not like Uber or Lyft where you just fly in and fly out. There has been an investment here. There's been something that they are invested in, and we are still doing okay. Even at the beginning of the pandemic when we had 300 cars and the phone lines were pretty quiet and the apps were pretty quiet, the demand and the supply were pretty okay. They were
Yeah,
balanced.
yeah, and I think that's given to your personality running the show, because you are a very people's person, and you are a person that really wants to invest in people and how they feel and what they feel like working with you versus just X amount of dollars paid here and there. Just the whole experience, I think,
Yeah.
is really important. And you've done that really well, and that's kind of like the things that we like here at Career Cross. We want to know about people, because it's not just like, taking a job or a career. There are waves and waves of challenges that come your way, and yet you haven't given up. You have not given up, and I don't think you're going to give up. And I applaud you and I want you to keep going. And I really do. I as a consumer, you've really changed my perspective today on what went on in the past and the history of everything. And I'm kind of
Well,
questioning now the morality, the
well,
morality.
yeah, I mean, the idea is that, people walk in, not as much now because we're in a pandemic,
Yep.
but, how are your kids? How is your wife? How are, like, these are the conversations that we still get to have, and this is the reason why I enjoy coming to work every day. The
Yep.
taxi driver who most recently returned that 200-year-old violin, the other driver who kept a woman from jumping off the Leaside Side Bridge. Another driver, just a couple of months ago, they found a 90-year-old missing senior in the city. Like, these are the things where you're like,
And how come
it's
those don't get told? Are these, because I don't think these are normal things that happen. These are things that you guys should be applauded for being heroes.
well, you know what? The Toronto police did recognize the driver in the situation where it was our staff and the driver who worked together and found this 90-year-old senior who was missing. There was an article in one of the local news media, and there was about the violin being returned. That was in the Toronto Star. It, it it just, the thing that I found, and I was told this during the whole sort of Uber Lyft thing. It was a producer at one of our local TV shows who said to me, well, like, I'll say, why is this news? Why is it newsworthy that, Uber has puppies in their cars or something? Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
when there are actual things to talk about that are going on here in our city, when it comes to people and small businesses and all the things we've talked about, and they go, well, that's just,
Yeah, it's like we are
right.
so empathetic towards like how an Uber car is cool from the inside,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
but yet the real heroes, somebody saving a 90-year-old senior missing in the city, or a 200-year-old violent, like you said. That's a much more better story to share,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
think what you guys have done is fascinating, by far fascinating, and I want you guys to keep it going, because
yeah.
you've really shown thick skin. That's one. You've really shown how to take on a multi-billion-dollar organization that's just trying to like string you guys around them, but you've
Yeah.
really put up a fight and you're not giving up. And I hope you guys do
Got
well.
the
And I
gray hair.
hope the what? Sorry.
You got the gray hair to show it.
No, yeah. Well, I guess that's also the stress comes in gray.
Well, and the pandemic, I think it accelerated it.
The pandemic has the pandemic given you time to reflect on things as things kind of got slower, or maybe less? Or
Not
did
at
you
all.
reflect on anything that you might come up with in the future, or your vision of the world now, or how you see things? Because I think now it's like buy, like, the way things are, it's like buy more local,
Mhm.
forget the the big boys, and with the pandemic, people are trying to be supportive to local businesses and things. Have you seen kind of the sense of community now? Do you feel it more?
From our community, I have seen, like, for us, shopping local, using local companies, our developers are in-house. We have really always been of the mind, supporting, because again, we are a company built on small businesses, right?
Yep.
If it weren't for all of these small businesses, and we still consider ourselves a small business. We are a local company that, again, doesn't own all these cars. We are a brand,
Yep.
we have a software platform, and we have a marketing strategy. And that's all there is to
Okay.
entire company.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's it. So, you do, it does put things into perspective for you. It's nice to see that people are rallying behind, small businesses now during the pandemic. I would say that while our demand for service has gone down, the the level of being busy at work has not changed for me.
Okay.
It's actually just a different, the mental health implications of this pandemic are going to be astronomical. It's
Yep.
it's it's
That's
huge.
very true. That is
Yeah,
very true. That is
the
very true.
being able to be available to people is really important to me. Even if it's a quick email or phone call or whatever. People who are working in our office, and we're making changes. There are things that when we're dealing with thousands of drivers, making any change can be very risky. And
Yep.
right now, while things are a little bit, while the demand is not quite as high, and maybe there are a lot of drivers who've decided, two today who email me like, I'm old enough, I'm not trying to catch COVID, and whatever, and they
Yep.
make a joke of it a little bit, like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
are letting
I always tell people, like, standing outside Walmart for 20 minutes is like
go.
going to see the next Die Hard or Jurassic Park movie, to be
Yeah,
honest. I make the joke of it. I know it's not, funny, but there is somewhat a sense to it. And, I stand for 20 minutes and at a lineup outside of Walmart just to go get
yeah, it's
napkins or some food or something, you know what I
true.
mean?
So nothing.
So
So yeah,
that's become the new norm. That's become
yeah,
the new norm. And
everything takes longer, and everything now though requires so much more attention than it did before. But also, we're making changes internally that will help us be more efficient when things come back.
yeah,
So now has provided us a bit of a window to make some changes that I've wanted to make for a long time, but my attention has been on something else, on our dispatch software mostly. So now I'm moving to some things that are going on in here that I'd like to see change to make drivers' lives easier
yeah.
too, because wherever we can do that, that's important to me. So that's what I've been doing lately, and I'm here every day.
And
So
what are your aspirations, like the goals for like your company? Obviously, you want to grow, you want to be something. Do you have like these big aspirations where you want like 1,000 fleets,
yeah,
flying cars in 2077 or something? I
yeah,
don't know. No,
yeah. No, I actually, my aspirations are health and happiness.
health
That's
and
it.
happiness.
Everyone
That's
around,
amazing. That
you
is
know,
amazing.
that I make a good living. I work very hard. I want people who work here to be happy and healthy, and I want to have good relationships with people. And I do think that, don't get me wrong, I'm not, you know, I I don't misunderstand how that affects our ability to become a bigger business or to grow.
Yeah,
Happy drivers make happy customers,
yeah.
and there is a bit of a circle of life in terms of how things work around here. But as long as I feel like I'm doing the right thing, I will be very happy to carry on. And I love my Mini. I don't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't want a Benz or a Beamer or a private jet. That's good. One of
Yeah,
the things I've had kind of like was curious. How do you like when you surround yourself or you recruit, like what pop, like do you kind of like surround yourself with good people, good intentions, kind of things like that? Because that's very particular. I know, like when I ask this, the reason why I ask is because it takes a lot to make a good company, and it takes a lot to make a company and its people happy in
Yeah,
general. So do you kind of like look for that, I guess, trait in a person,
of course.
or do you kind of like just like you get 1,000 resumes? Because I've been taken once. I went to work for an employer once, and they hired a lot of people that were not from around here, and I didn't have the best of experiences with it because they thought I was kind of new here,
Mhm.
and they kind of like it's like their way or the highway kind of thing. I was like, no, no, no,
That's
it
never
doesn't
gonna
work
work.
that way. I've been here for maybe 14, 13 years. Oh,
Yeah,
why are you guys doing this to me? And they're like, well, they're like, well, we have to have a few difficult discussions with you. I'm like, no, no, no difficult discussions at all. I don't have to be here. Honestly,
yeah,
I can be gone, no problem. Because they thought I was going to be challenging. No, I'm not going to be challenging. If it's not working for me, I'm just going to walk away.
yeah.
But going back to you, but that's the kind of like traits you look for in people that you work with. Are you looking for just good
Just good
nature?
people, good nature. I mean, really, we always hire from the call center, frankly. Like, I started as a call taker, and when I started at 15, I was writing orders for taxi cabs on paper sort of like this,
Yeah.
and I stamp it in the little time clock, and then I pass it under the little partition to the dispatcher, who had a map with magnets that had taxi cab numbers on
Oh,
it.
okay.
So
Wow.
that's
Wow.
how it started.
The,
And yeah, never mind what would happen when someone lost an article in a cab. You're like, oh no, get the papers, they're going through.
yeah.
But you know, it's important to me that people understand the business, and the best people we have working here actually started out, um, in large part in the call center, because
Okay.
I think it's really important. And a lot of them, we've had the kids, taxi drivers' kids come and work, start out in the call center. And we have, people come from all over the place,
Yeah.
and they start out there. And what we've always tried to drive home, pun not intended, is that they have to imagine that every person who's sitting out in a taxi right now is someone who's paying, frankly, paying for the privilege, costing them in time, it's costing them in gas. And if you don't take the information correctly, that says to me that you don't care about them. And you
Wow.
also don't care about the single mom who's waiting, in the cold with her children. You
Yeah.
don't care about that either. And
Yeah.
so we really do start out with a message of, if you don't care about people, then this is not the place for you. And
Okay.
that's generally, if you work in the taxi industry though, you work. This is not, we're not messing around. There's no hanging around doing nothing. There's always something that has to be done.
Yeah.
And the people who work here, the privilege that I have to work with the 200 staff, that work in this office is amazing. And I wouldn't change a thing. They're just hardworking, and we promote from within the call center. And
Yeah.
that's how you bring that culture of caring through when we're bringing people up to whatever position that might become available. So that's
Yeah.
how we do it.
And that's an amazing approach because I don't think we in today's world that has been the approach in general. It's always been resumes and shiny resumes, and that's the kind of thing I also want, like with career curiosities. Basically, when I talk to people and have them on my podcast and have them over video or whatever, they kind of see the ins and outs of, oh yeah, well, you know what, I would like to be an operations manager because Kristine knows how to make a good environment. You know what I mean? She's an operations manager for Beck Taxi companies, and she's done a fantastic job. Yes, these are the challenges, and you've outlined them all, right? What you've seen, the wave, everything, and
Yeah.
uh, and that kind of like people will be like, oh well, I kind of have similar traits as her. I might go into that a younger audience, maybe. I might
Mhm.
go into that role with another company, or this is something I find interesting. All right, and that's what I'm trying to really do overall with everything that Career Curiosity brings, and just it's a fun podcast. I hope you had fun. Honestly, did you have
Yeah.
fun? Did you
Thank
have
you.
fun? Yes. And
Yeah, it's good.
make it fun and, talk to people, real people, just a human element of it with careers and
As you
jobs.
heard, that's my favorite thing.
Yeah, that's the best thing, and I'm so happy we've had you here today. The
Well,
one last thing that do you have any favorite shows or movies that you like to watch, and like what is inspiring to you from that?
um, I I don't really. I will say to you that I definitely have some favorite movies. I mean,
Yeah,
over the holidays, I watched the movie called The Holiday. I watch it every year.
yeah, yeah.
So
The binge watching of movies during
yeah,
Christmas.
I mean, I watched the what's the one with Kaylee Cuoco that's on right now? I can't think of the flight attendant. The flight
Okay.
attendant. I watched that. I watched The Undoing, but mostly because I don't have to drive my kids to soccer. So
Yes. Yeah. Right now. Yeah. What
yeah,
do you want soccer to come back?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy having dinner with my family every night. But at the same time, there is, it does become, even as much as I'm doing every day, all day,
Hmm.
it does become a bit. You kind of get home and you're like, okay, well, the house is clean, and I've done all
Yeah.
the,
I've
you
done
know,
everything.
yeah, I don't want to open a bottle of wine right now, and at some point, you can't go to a gym. Not that I've been going to a gym. Like I just, I do like the life. I do like being involved in things like that, and watching my kids play soccer brings me a lot of joy. And
Joy. Yeah.
yeah, it keeps them, they love it. It keeps them sort of active and doing things, which obviously takes the pressure off me to, hey, get outside and do something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It also takes out a lot of their energy too. They're tired after one game or two games. Even when we used to have like in tournaments, you have those 2 games a day and
Yeah,
stuff. I remember because I coach soccer in the area here in Richmond Hill, so I kind of know when the players get really tired. But some of their families are happy. The parents are happy. They're like, "Hey, can you make sure they play really tough
yeah,
today?"
I love,
Because
I
we want
love
to go to the movies. We want to watch a movie. But
it.
I think now with the pandemic, yes, it's hit us badly. It's hit us, but there's some sort of limelight that we've all had in some way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
We were able to spend time with family more. We were able to spend time with loved ones more when things weren't hectic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been hectic for a lot of people, but I think there's positivity that came out of it as well. I think I've self-reflected on like my plan for the next 5 years and what I want to do. I'm sure I hope you guys keep going, and I hope you keep doing what you're doing with the same attitude. And like you said, nothing changes for the next few years, and
I
hopefully you
know.
guys and one day some people will know the truth and
Yeah,
everything will be because I kind of find it weird now that you told me all this today about Uber. I thought they weren't. I didn't think they were fishing like that. I didn't think they were just like putting a net of
yeah,
cab drivers, and they're like, hey, here's a little extra cash. Just give me a client list and we'll deal with it.
yeah.
And kind of like boom, learn
But
into society, right? So
that's it. It was pretty bad, but in the end, again, my family is healthy and happy, and I'm good. I like to work, and I'll keep doing this, and I just, it's the people. That's it. In the end, it's, these drivers are so much more than taxi drivers. They're dads and brothers and sons and cricket players and
yeah, and
you know
son-in-laws
and
and
son-in-law
uncles. Yeah, yeah, it's
players too, and they cyclists, and they're all these things that
yeah,
that
they're part
keep,
of who we are in community today.
yeah,
Yeah,
they really are part of the fabric of the city. And so I just don't think that there's anywhere that I'd rather be in terms of being able to be around so much positive and interesting stuff.
yeah, yeah. The one more thing, if you go back in time, would you do it all over again?
Sure, why not? I don't know. Yeah, that's not something I've thought about too much, but I don't think that there was ever a point in my life that I was kind of like, should I do this or should I do that? Or I also don't think that I have been hit so hard or have felt so much negativity here that I would have changed it. So I do think, there's the what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. nothing worth doing is easy. All these things. I kind of invoke some of those when I'm feeling like, all right, that's enough. But
Yeah.
I don't think I would change anything. I don't think that I would want to be anywhere else, and I would certainly not want to be on any other side of this story. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And when you think about the past versus today, the do you see like okay, do you see like changes in society? Do you see changes in government anytime soon with the way things are going? Are you optimistic for the future in terms of dealing with things or
I do think, like, I know I am not optimistic about City Hall. I will never. I guess because, like I said at the beginning, that's probably the thing that was the most glaringly disappointing about the process, was that the whole mandate of government is public safety and consumer protection.
yeah,
Now, in the face of a climate crisis that our city has called, they greenlit an unlimited number of uh, Uber and Lyft vehicles. They took away any environmental restrictions on taxis that should have been applied to Uber and Lyft vehicles.
yeah.
Nothing they say makes sense.
Oh,
Nothing
okay.
they do is they say one thing and they do something else. And I don't the level of disappointment, the level of disheartedness and complete destruction of any confidence in our government, really at any level. I mean, I haven't had a whole lot of dealings with the federal government, but at the municipal and the provincial level, I see that there are people who run and they're like, I'm going to change things, I'm going to do things. But I do think that once you get into these places, it doesn't matter how good your intentions are. It's like a it's like a cloud of smoke that just
Yeah,
envelops people in, and everyone just it becomes too difficult to make any real change
yeah.
because everything is about bartering and dealing and getting along, and if you do this, I'll do that. you know I actually don't see it getting any better. I would love to be able to say something else, but
No, you could say whatever you want, but here's the thing. Would you like if you said do you feel like okay, so people run for office or whatever the city hall council, whatever the system is,
hmm,
and they were like, "Oh, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to change the world for this industry." Specifically,
yeah,
let's say they come and say, "We'll change it for the cab industry in Toronto." And then they go in and they get smudged with the same cloud that was previous and they can't change. So before Uber and Lyft came, was it the same thing or
sure.
was different?
It's been forever.
It's
So
been forever like that.
feelings between the city and our regulated industry is just it's never changed, and it's decades old.
Yeah.
And I think, again, we were just too compliant, and
Oh,
maybe
okay.
we're still too compliant, but I also see the value. I see so much value in the safety items that we actually, now I look at government now as bottom line, the lowest, you know most or least, sort of the most you need to do is the least that has to be done when it comes to government regulation. That's
Yeah.
that's the way I view it now. And so that, wherever we can go above and beyond because it makes sense, I will do that.
Yeah.
But when, as time goes on, that's the only thing I do struggle with.
Yeah.
Why do we care? Why do we care what they say? Why do we do what they want us to do? And for now, it's because of the investment in the humanity that is attached to it. But as time goes on, and sadly, that's going to change. The people who are driving taxis now, who are investing in this business now, are not doing it at the same level that was currently crushed,
Yeah.
as that man I told you who came here crying. That generation or that sort of level of investment is gone. And as we see things, um, changing,
Yeah.
we may change in that way too.
Yeah.
We may change in that way too. And, making sure that we're doing better than whatever they could possibly require us to do,
Yeah.
but not many dealings with them at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's amazing. Like I'm actually blown away by just amount of information that we gathered today about your industry and how things and how you were kind of robbed without anybody giving you a chance to speak out or anything like that. And the majority of time you were on television. Uh, you had minimal minutes to talk about things, but you never, really exposed the whole story, the real story behind how they got in and they started phishing your customers and phishing people and all that. They basically threw a net
Yeah.
into the city, and then they caught the drivers first. The drivers handed over the data and the information, and that's what they were doing. They were just gathering data, like I don't know what to call it, but it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Yep.
The
Go ahead.
reason I complain on television, or I didn't at the time, is because you have a choice when you're faced with this situation. You either compete or you complain.
Yeah.
It's hard to do both. So most important to me was to compete. Once we were established that, okay, we're going to be okay here, that's when I can complain. That's when I tell the stories. But if my minutes are taken up with little clips of me complaining about Uber, then I don't talk about Beck Taxi. And so instead, that for me, and what seemed to make sense to me was if they would love for me to say something nasty or tell the bad story or whatever, but that doesn't help me. Help promote our business, right?
Yep, and that's the perfect way to approach it. That's I can never there's no best way, but that's a perfect way to kind of have an approach on things. Kristine Hubbard, thank you so much for coming on our show today, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. And we hope you've had a good experience with us in Career Curiosity. Thanks, Scott and Greta Grip Studios that have been hosting us. Pardon me?
They're probably like, wrap this up. She just talks too much.
No, actually not at all. That's why we have a 2-hour window. Not at all. Like, that's why we have a 2-hour window. And that's what I want to get. I want people to talk, and I want people to, talk about their challenges and all that. That's what we exactly want. And I hope we become a good podcast for people to listen and learn from it. And it's just an educational platform that you can just listen to. Plus your school and the paper that you read, you can hear other people's experience in any industry, like your industry, other industries. I've had you're my second interview actually. So you will see the episode as soon as you approve it.
I mean, I'm not gonna. There's nothing that I'm gonna tell you can't be published.
All right. Well, we might have to just take out the minutes when we cut off and we dropped and you couldn't hear me and all that. That stuff will take off.
We'll take content, I'm not. I've said it. I'll say it again, and I'll say it again. So.
Yeah. No worries. Pleasure to have you. And can you wish your parents? I know it's a little bit after Christmas. Both your parents for what they've done for Beck Taxi. Wish them a merry belated Christmas and a happy New Year, and to your immediate family as well, and everybody on your staff and everybody that works with you at Beck Taxi and the whole Beck Taxi family, including your vendors and everybody else and contractors. Thank you so much, Kristine.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.